Everyone has the idea of what an organ sounds like, and we have this sense that it's caught up with a very Gothic sonic landscape. The organ is always an interesting instrument to watch as an audience member because none of it moves, and often you don't see the player. So it becomes a very kind of meditative experience.
The organ has that very interesting sort of dimension in the fact that it was the first synthesizer.
The organ is starting to have a bit of a moment. I think it's just slowly going to keep building now that the spotlight is coming onto the instrument. The organ is a very delicate instrument because it is a huge mechanical beast. Things can break really easily, and that's to be expected. But that kind of fragileness and the delicacy that it produces is what makes it so interesting in bringing it into modern music. The fact that it is a mechanical beast means that you have complete control over that instrument, and that's what's really exciting to explore as a composer or performer.
The features that are specific to organs in general, well, one of the main ones is that they can sustain indefinitely. And the only other instrument that can really do that is an electronic instrument, like a synth. So they share that. They can create different timbres by pulling out different stops. So they share that. What's particular about mechanical organs, what makes them so brilliant and why you need time to experiment, is that because they're allowing passage of air through the pipes, you can pull out these stops at different levels and create detunings and whistle tones and different harmonics. And you can do that in a very fluid, dynamic way. So you can really find certain tones that are really difficult to do, say, like on a piano, where everything is basically on or off.
People don't think of new music and the organ as going together. As soon as you write the word organ in, people often think, oh, no, that's not for me. I think I'm spoilt in London, really, because audiences generally tend to be much more open to doing slightly more unusual things. You have to present the music and what you're doing with the best possible kind of marketing and make people realize that it doesn't have to be anything to do with what you've imagined it.
I started working with the organ over 10 years ago and wanted to start a festival after my first commission because I just absolutely fell in love with the instrument and couldn't believe how versatile it was, and that there weren't many people working with it in a contemporary way. It's not really known for its contemporary works, and there are some amazing contemporary works that have been written, but it is very much, I think, in a lot of people's minds, in the church or classical. And so that's a really hard thing to kind of disintegrate into. Actually, this is the world's first synthesizer, you know, and it can be incorporated into many different genres of music. Every organ is different, so you can't find the same organ in two different places. You have to spend time with that instrument to get to know its personality and its quirks. And I think that's such a beautiful thing because there's just so much character, and it's an exploration every time you visit a new instrument. Now, obviously that sometimes can be a problem if you're writing a piece on one organ and then transferring to another. But at the same time, it makes it extra exciting because you can then tailor that piece to this new organ.
I think the barriers that artists face when they're going into working with the organ, there's two. There's the history of it. It's got a really long history, and that is something that you always have to contend with when you come to an instrument that's got that kind of cultural background. But also access is a big problem. If you're trying to work through or beyond what's already been done, you need time to experiment, and that's really hard to do because you can't borrow an organ, you can't take it home. You have to actually get into a building because they're built into buildings. And there's also two different types of organs. There's the electronic organ and there's a mechanical organ, and they actually function quite differently. And the sounds that you can get from these two types of organ can be radically different, and you need time. You need time in there.
The way that I approach the organ is just to try to bridge a gap between the enthusiasts of the church music world and the organ world and people who are involved and love electronic music. And actually the two things are so similar. You know, the way that you can use the organ as if it were a synthesizer and the effects that it can produce. And also the fact that the organ is very definitely a site-specific instrument. So it's a real sonic experience to be in a building and listening to these instruments. I think when you're trying to reach a new audience, you have to present really interesting music. The organ is a vehicle for so many different types of music making, and it's really interesting how people who are working at the cutting edge of electronic music are so interested in using the instrument.
For me, it's just about giving access to composers and hoping to build the repertoire of contemporary and experimental music.
People are writing for the organ who haven't written before. I worked with Tom Jenkinson earlier this year, Squarepusher. His output is so vast and so different, every record is so individual. He wrote a 50-minute organ work which sounded like organ repertoire, so it can work the other way around. I think there are actually loads of people who are coming to the organ as an instrument, certainly electronic music field. I did a whole bunch of concerts with Oneohtrix by Never last year, and if you listen to his last two albums, they're full of organ music, organ samples, and that's where the idea for this joint concert came from, was just the fact that his music is full of it.
When we had our organ restored 4 years ago, we got a Heritage Lottery grant. And with that grant, you don't only get money to actually restore the organ, but you also get money to start an outreach project around it once it's back into the space. You're kind of pulling different art forms together around the instrument. And so people are not just thinking, oh, organ, I don't want to do that. If you bring it from another angle, then it becomes more accessible.
I think we just need to have more of it. I've got some really interesting and exciting projects coming up, and I just hope that more people, both in the organ world and from the non-classical music world, get together and make some beautiful work.
To push the organ to a wider audience, I think just get more composers to write music for it. I really don't think there's a magic solution. If composers write a piece that connects with people, that's the best way to get audiences coming to see it.